Hello everyone, welcome to the weekly Magnum Current Affairs, and today let us discuss important news which has appeared from 26 June to 1st of July 2025. So the news which we have taken up for discussion are: first, special intensive revision of electoral rules. Now I am sure you must have reading these news particularly with respect to elections in Bihar. So in this regard, let's understand about the powers of Election Commission with respect to electoral rules. Now please understand that there are two electoral laws. These are Representation of People Act 1950 and Representation of People Act 1951. Now the power with respect to electoral rolls have been provided through the Representation of People Act of 1950. This is something you must know. And the Representation of People Act of 1951 is with respect to various powers of conduct of elections for the Election Commission. Now see, please understand this, all these powers are not statutory powers in a sense, because all these powers flow from Article 324. So the repository of power is the constitutional provision, that is Article 324, and the word mentioned here is superintendence, direction and control. So the Election Commission has wide constitutional powers to provide superintendence, direction and control for the conduct of elections and also for the overall revision of electoral rolls. So technically this is the constitutional power, and based on this Parliament has enacted two legislation, namely Representation of People Act 1950 and 51 accordingly. So from a technical point of view, this is the constitutional power of Election Commission, and based on this Parliament has made these laws. So from a technical point of view, all these powers mentioned under both these legislations obviously are statutory powers, right? Are statutory powers of Election Commission. So this is one thing which is important to understand, and we will go through in detail about this particular thing. The second news is regarding Adi Karmi Yogi initiative, basically a governance model for the tribal areas launched by Government of India. Then we have ECI starts delisting of RUPP, that is registered unrecognized political party. So two important news with respect to powers of Election Commission, and in this regard there is another rather this is an order, election symbols order. So this is also something which we must know, election symbols order. Based on this, the EC gives various decisions with respect to symbols, with respect to various decisions of political party. Let's say the split which happened in the Shiv Sena, the political party of Maharashtra. So that decision was given by the Election Commission under the election symbols order. So whenever Election Commission decides any disputes, it acts in an almost like a tribunal, that is in an adjudicatory capacity. And this news in the Indian Express, what makes the Indian Constitution secular even without the word in the preamble. Now this is a very philosophical concept. Let's understand this, the concept of secularism, how India follows secularism, what is mentioned in the Constitution, and also how the West sees secularism as. So see, these two news, as in this one, intensive revision and Adi Karmi Yogi, these also appear in the PIB, and this one appearing in the Hindu and this one appearing in the Indian Express. So on that note, let's start our discussion. See what has appeared in the news. Roll crunch on the revision of Bihar's electoral rules. Election commissioners rushed intensive electoral revision in Bihar, risk voter exclusion. So this is one of the concerns with respect to a revision of voter list, that on a very short period. Now yesterday there was a news that the Election Commission has relaxed some of the criteria which was earlier provided with respect to revision of electoral rolls, Nevertheless, we need to understand this power of Election Commission for revision of electoral rules. Another news saying, people entitled to vote only in constituencies where they reside, says Chief Election Commissioner. Means what he is highlighting is that many people have more than one voter card, more than one EPIC, electoral photo identity card. Now this is wrong. If you have more than one EPIC card, this is a violation of the law, right? So it says one of the key objectives of the drive is to identify many persons having multiple voter ID cards, who have retained multiple voter ID cards of different constituencies, and thus the idea is to weed out such multiplicity, and they can only retain the voter ID of one area. So this is one important point highlighted by the Chief Election Commissioner. So this intensive role carried out by the Election Commission obviously has certain benefits, have certain concerns. So if it is done on a very normal basis, yes, it is absolutely fine, provided under the powers of Election Commission under the Representation of People Act 1950. But if it is hurried, then definitely this is one of the important concerns, and this is a very major concern because it impacts electoral democracy. Because if someone is not able to participate in the election process, then basically it is excluding certain citizens, and also can be said to be in violation of Article 14 and 15 of the Constitution of India. Now regarding your syllabus, Election Commission is an important constitutional post, and hence this topic gets covered under appointment to various constitutional posts, powers, functions and responsibilities of various constitutional bodies such as Election Commission. So quickly let us understand about the objective of special intensive revision. Now it says, to ensure that the names of all eligible citizens are included in the electoral roll so as to enable them to exercise their franchise. Now according to Article 326, every citizen who is 18 years or above is entitled to vote. Every citizen who is 18 years or above is entitled to vote. Now just because a person or a citizen is 18 years or above will not be entitled to vote, he or she have to register, they have to register their names, in their constituency, and hence registration needs to be done with the Election Commission. So this registration needs to be done with the Election Commission. Only then a citizen will be allowed to vote in a particular constituency. You cannot just go vote at any constituency wherever you feel like. It's not that just because someone is 18 years or above, they are entitled to vote, right? Now earlier this age was 21 years and was reduced. Earlier this age was 21 years, was reduced to 18 years by Constitution 61st Amendment. Just remember this. So age of voting earlier was 21 years, and the Constitution 61st Amendment reduced it to 18 years. Second important aspects of special intensive rule is it needs to ensure that no ineligible voter is included in the electoral rolls, because many people have migrated, many people have left the country, or many people, let's say, are ineligible because of various other grounds either mentioned in the Constitution or according to the Representation of People Act. Either ways, if someone is ineligible to vote, then their name should not be included in the voter list. Further, introduce complete transparency in the process of addition or deletion of electors in the electoral rolls. So the question is how to ensure that this whole process of adding or deleting someone's names is transparent. So that is the whole scenario with respect to special intensive revision conducted by the Election Commission. Another important point is that what necessitated the conduct of special intensive revision? Rapid urbanization, and this because from most of the areas of towns, villages and smaller cities, people migrate, okay? People migrate for any various purposes, job, education, marriage, or other purposes, right? And hence, and they start living in those cities. So the Election Commission is saying those people who have migrated, it needs to be checked that whether these people who have migrated, whether they have their names registered, where they have their names registered in the new constituency or in the new area where they have migrated. Let's say someone from Patna has migrated to Bangalore or Bengaluru, then it needs to be checked that whether that person has also applied for or also has an epic card, election card in Bengaluru or in Mumbai or in any other place. Next, same point, rapid urbanization and frequent migration, young citizens becoming eligible to vote. So those people who have crossed 18 years of age or more than 18 years of age or 18 years or more, they also needs to be registered. Hence, EC is also talking about registration of new citizens. Registration of new citizens. What else? Inclusion of the names of foreign illegal immigrants in case they have been granted citizenship, right? So overall it says that the above reason have necessitated the conduct of an intensive revision so as to ensure integrity and preparation of error-free electoral roll takes place and the whole process of election is smooth. Now please understand, the process of election is very much associated with democracy, because without election or without a regular election, that to a free election, the whole idea of democracy does not have any meaning or does not have any value, because unless citizens are free to choose whomever they want in power, unless that freedom is there or if that freedom is taken away, then the whole meaning of democratic or democracy or election or government chosen by democracy holds no value or holds no water. And how it will be conducted? The booth level officers shall be conducting house to house survey for verification during the process of this intensive revision. So it will be done from as a house to house survey. So this is with respect to special intensive revision. So let's say if a question is asked in your mains examination that what is the purpose of special intensive revision, or why the government, why the Election Commission started SIR for Bihar, then at least you can highlight these important points. Now in this regard, let's go through the important powers of Election Commission under Article 324, 326, Section 16 of RPA, Section 21 and 23 of RPA, because all these provisions empowers the Election Commission to carry out revision of this electoral rolls. Now 324, as I've told you, it gives wide powers, plenary powers to the Election Commission, and it says superintendence, direction and control of elections to be vested in the Election Commission. And for this purpose, the Election Commission can issue various orders for the conduct of elections. So it says the superintendence, direction and control of what? See, the preparation of electoral rolls. So for this purpose, also the Constitution under Article 324 grants Election Commission certain powers, and also conduct of all elections to Parliament, State Legislature and to the offices of President and Vice President held under this Constitution shall be vested in a commission referred as Election Commission. So the Article 324 empowers the Election Commission to issue superintendence or to grant superintendence, direction and control with respect to preparation of electoral roll and also conduct of elections. So two aspects highlighted under Article 324 is or are preparation of electoral rolls and second, conduct of elections. Conduct of elections for where? Parliament, state legislatures, President and vice president. Okay, so these are the important highlights with respect to Article 324. Now Article 325 says no person to be ineligible for inclusion in or to claim to be included in a special electoral roll on grounds of religion, race, caste or sex. So basically based on these grounds you cannot either include particularly or exclude particularly. That is, someone just because he is from a particular religion or race or caste or whether they are male or female, just because of this their name should not be either included or excluded. The criteria for inclusion and exclusion is simple. Under the constitution, under Article 326, if they are 18 years or more, or if they are not disqualified under other provisions of the law. So this says there shall be one general electoral roll for every territorial constituency for election to either House of Parliament or to the either House of State Legislature. So it's talking about one general electoral roll for every territorial constituency for Parliament and State Legislature. And no person shall be ineligible for inclusion in any such roll or claim to be included in any special electoral roll for any constituency on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex or any of them. Hence, Article 325 in a way says no person to be ineligible for inclusion or to claim to be included in a special electoral roll with respect to certain grounds. And Article 326 provides for the age. So it says elections to the House of the People and State Legislature shall be done on the basis of adult suffrage. So this is mentioned under Article 326. That is to say, every person who is a citizen of India and every person who is a citizen of India. So this is the first criteria. Citizen of India and who is not less than 18 years of age on such date as may be fixed by under law made by Parliament, is not otherwise disqualified under this constitution or any law made by appropriate legislature on the ground of non-residence. So basically the Parliament can make a law to make you disqualify for voting on grounds of non-residence, unsoundness of mind, crime or corrupt or illegal practice shall be entitled to be registered as voter at any such election. So these four grounds, that is according to the constitution under Article 326, first non-residence, second unsoundness of mind, third crime or corrupt or illegal practice. So these can be grounds of removing your name or not including your name in the electoral rolls. Now coming to Representation of People Act 1950, Section 16 says disqualification for registration in an electoral roll. So this law empowers the Parliament to provide for such disqualification. A person shall be disqualified for registration in an electoral roll if he is not a citizen of India, if he is of unsound mind and stands so declared by a competent court, or is for the time being disqualified from voting under the provisions of any law relating to corrupt practices and other offences in connection with elections. So if anyone is disqualified under these provisions, then their names will not be included or they will not be allowed to vote in a particular election. So it says the name of any person who becomes so disqualified after registration shall forthwith be struck off the electoral roll in which it is included. So their name can be removed from the electoral rolls. So let's say if a statement is asked in your exam that once a name is registered in the electoral roll, it can never be removed. It would be incorrect because on certain grounds mentioned under Representation of People Act 1950, it provides for qualification, and hence if a person does not fulfill those qualifications, their name could be struck off from the electoral roll. Section 19 says conditions of registration. Subject to the foregoing provisions of this part, every person who is not less than 18 years of age on the qualifying date and is ordinarily resident in a constituency. See this point, this is very important. So a person can only register in a particular constituency. In a particular constituency. All of this is provided under the Representation of People Act 1950. Shall be entitled to be registered in the electoral roll for that constituency. In Section 21, talks about preparation and revision of electoral rolls. Electoral roll for each constituency shall be prepared in the prescribed manner by reference to the qualifying date. Now this shall be provided, or this shall, the election commission can come up with various qualifying dates, and EC has all the powers to do so, and shall come into force immediately upon its final publication in accordance with the rules made under this particular provision. So these are some of the powers with respect to election commission under Representation of People Act and also under the Constitution of India with respect to the power of registering the name of person in the electoral rolls. Now this I have just taken for your reference under the notification issued by the Election Commission on 24th June. So it says special intensive revision and with respect to 1st July 2025 as the qualifying date. So it says the Election Commission has directed a special intensive revision in exercise of its powers under Article 324, Section 21 of the Representation of People Act 1950, that is this one which we just discussed, and along with other applicable provisions of Representation of People Act 1950 with reference to 1st July 2025 as the qualifying date in the state of Bihar. So this is what the original notification of Election Commission says, and then and accordingly this intensive revision will be carried on by the Election Commission in Bihar. So this is with respect to, this is the legal aspects with respect to the powers of Election Commission under the Constitution of India and also under Representation of People Act 1950. And this topic becomes important mainly from your GS2 perspective regarding powers of Election Commission, particularly regarding electoral rolls. Now the next very important topic, what makes the Indian Constitution secular even without the word in the preamble. Now I'm sure most of you know that the word preamble was added in the Constitution after 42nd Amendment. Question always asked is that, was our Constitution even secular without the word secular? The answer is, simple answer is yes. The idea of secularism as a philosophy has been ingrained in the Constitution through various provisions, right? And whether a word is mentioned in the preamble or not mentioned in the preamble, basically the other provisions does highlight that important aspect. So of late this controversy has erupted. So it says that the Constitution 42nd Amendment introduced the word secular in the preamble, but secularism is inherent in the Constitution, a theme that runs through several provisions. Now when we talk about secularism, it simply means Indian secularism needs to be understood from three important perspectives. These are, first, state neutrality, second, religious tolerance, and third, equal treatment of all religions. So effectively, non-discrimination is the essence of Indian secularism. Non-discrimination is the essence of Indian secularism, that you cannot discriminate based on religion, and this has also been provided in Article 15. Article 14 also says that there shall be equality. You cannot violate the principles of equality, right? Similarly, Article 16 says that in public services, no one can be discriminated on the grounds of these grounds, particularly of religion. Just because someone is from certain religion, they shall not be disqualified from a public service. And obviously under part 3, right to religion as a part of fundamental right has been provided from Article 25 to 28, and this can also be found under Article 29 and 30 regarding cultural and educational rights of minorities. However, the term minorities is to be understood in a different context under Article 29 and also 30. That's a separate issue. But these three are the most essential aspects regarding Indian secularism, because this is one topic which you must understand, and through this we need to understand the constitutional philosophy of secularism. See, in S.R. Bommai judgment, which is the most important judgment regarding secularism, because it suggested that secularism is one of the basic features of the Constitution, and since it's one of the basic features of the Constitution, hence the word cannot be, or this philosophy cannot be taken away from the constitution. So just by removing a name, let's say tomorrow the name is removed from the preamble, but the constitutional ethos, the constitutional philosophy of secularism still remains ingrained. And S.R. Bommai's judgment highlighted that what was implicit prior to Constitution 42nd Amendment, as in before the word secular was added in the preamble, what was implicit, that is the idea of constitutional secularism, the idea which was implicit by adding the word under preamble, that is secular, this idea was made explicit. So this is what S.R. Bommai judgment has highlighted, that what was implicit, that is without even mentioning, this idea was there, this philosophy was there in the constitution. So through the Constitution 42nd Amendment, this idea became explicit. And secularism is also one of the basic features of the Constitution of India. So it says, thus essence of Indian secularism is non-discrimination of people by the state on the basis of religion or its practices. Hence state cannot favor any religion nor discriminate any person from religion. Basically what Article 25 particularly does is to ensure relation between two individuals based on religion, not a relation between state and individual. And state in that sense maintains a certain principled distance. So it says, the concept of secularism, though not expressly mentioned in the preamble at the stage of its making, yet the idea was deeply embedded in the constitutional philosophy. And through the Constitution 42nd Amendment, the word secular was added to the Constitution, and what was implicit was made explicit by the amendment. So this is certain understanding regarding the constitutional philosophy of secularism ingrained in the constitutional provision. Now please understand one thing. Can state or can the government interfere? Can government interfere in religious practices? In religious practices? The answer is both yes and no. So every religion has two elements. Okay? Every religion has two elements. One element is its essential religious practice, the core part of the religion. Essential religious practice, core part of the religion, without which the religion will not stand. So let's say certain modes of worship, let's say certain religious activities, without which you cannot say that the person is following that religion. So whatever is this core part of the religion or essential religious practice of the religion, this is something where state cannot interfere. This is something which state cannot interfere, and those areas, this remaining area, can be categorized as associated practices, associated or secular practices. Excuse me, secular practices associated with religion. For example, a temple or a mosque or a church or a gurdwara wants to acquire land, and here the government can regulate its aspects. Let's say payment of salary to the priest. Here the state can regulate certain practices, or paying tax on certain accounts, state can regulate certain practices. So everything which is not an essential religious practice can be regulated by the state. And this was the same question asked in Sabrimala judgment. Court went into the whether restricting women of certain age, whether it was an essential religious practice. The answer was no, and hence the court said that that part can be regulated or guided based on constitutional ethos or constitutional morality. So we have already discussed this. This is again provided in your current affairs magazine, Magnum. Article 40, various fundamental rights, which already includes this ethos of secularism. Article 14, 15, 16, 25 and 29 and 30 regarding cultural and educational rights also mentioned about that. Important judgments include Kesavananda Bharati judgment, secularism declared as part of the constitution. Actually, it was done in S.R. Bommai judgment, reaffirmed secularism as a foundational constitutional value. Minerva Mills affirmed relevance of socialism as a guiding principle aligned with directive principles under Part 4. And recent developments, a 2-judge bench led by Chief Justice dismissed petition challenging the inclusion of secular and socialist in the preamble. So it highlights that secular and secular practices. So it says India is committed to a positive secularism, which entails religious diversity, pluralism and toleration. So our secularism is unlike the West. West follows a very separated concept of secularism, that is a negative secularism, and hence there is strict separation between state and religion. Then state cannot interfere in such practices which are integral or essential to any religion, and without a cornerstone of such practices the superstructure of religion cannot stand. So whatever those essential religious practices are, they are the cornerstone of those religion, and without these cornerstones the religion will fall. What practices can be regulated? It says practices not essential to religion but necessary of a worldly nature or of a worldly nature, and these includes paying wages to employees. Right to freedom of religion is not applicable to secular, political or commercial activities associated with religious practice, and this can be understood from Article 25. So let's go through first this provision. So it says freedom of Article 25 provides for freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion, subject to public order, morality and health. So on these 3 grounds, state can regulate religious practices. And to other provisions of this part, so basically other part under part 3, so certain religious practices can also be regulated with respect to other fundamental rights. All persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right freely to profess, practice and propagate religion. See, the word used here is person and not citizen. Hence, it also includes basically other than citizen. And nothing in this article shall affect the operation of any existing law or prevent the state from making any law regarding these, regulating or restricting any economic, financial, political or other secular activity which may be associated with religious practices. So religious practices within themselves, state cannot interfere, but any economic, financial, political or other secular activity associated with those core essential religious practices can be regulated by the state. Next, providing for social welfare and reform or throwing open of Hindu religious institutions of a public character to all classes and section of Hindus. So you see, the state can regulate various practices of religion if they are not essential religious practice. And Article 26 talks about religious freedom to manage religious affairs. So Article 25 basically gives freedom to individuals, and Article 26 provides freedom to religious institutions or denominations. So it says subject to public order, morality or health. So basically even religious denominations can be regulated on these grounds. Every religious denomination or any section thereof shall have a right to establish and maintain institutions for religious and charitable purposes, to manage its own affairs in the matter of religion, to own and acquire movable and immovable property, and administer such property in accordance with law. And Article 27 says freedom as to payment of taxes for promotion of any particular religion. No person shall be compelled to pay any taxes, the proceeds of which are specifically appropriated in payment of expenses for the promotion or maintenance of any particular religion. So state cannot demand tax for promotion of a particular religion. Now look into this question asked in the mains of 2019. The question was that what can France learn from Indian constitution's approach to secularism? A lot of things to be learned, and the Western philosophy of secularism, as I have told you, is based on the concept of negative secularism, and there you cannot even showcase your religion, in a sense that you cannot wear cultural dresses so that your religious symbols are reflected in public, and this French concept of secularism is referred as laicite. Now, laicite is the French principle of secularism, emphasizing separation of religion and state. So, there is strict separation between state and religion. It aims to create a neutral public sphere where religion does not influence government affairs and vice versa. So, basically, you cannot, let's say someone wants to wear their cultural dress, they are not allowed. And actually, a lot of debate or discussion occurred in France because of this aspect. So, it says, while ensuring freedom of conscience and belief, laicite also promotes equality and fraternity, requiring citizens to respect the values of the French Republic. So, basically, it is saying that when you are out in the public, you cannot associate or perceive to be associated with any religion, rather you have to be equal and you need to be religious neutral. You cannot showcase your religion even by wearing certain attires. Now, this news appeared way back. It's saying understanding laicite, the French principle of secularism. It involves the complete removal of religious values from public sphere and their replacement with secular values such as liberty, equality and fraternity. And the underlying goal of laicite is to impart tolerance and assimilate people. So, basically, someone cannot showcase their religious values in public sphere. So, that's the idea of laicite. Says the French government announced the practice of wearing abaya would be banned in state-run schools. Almost similar issue erupted in one of the school in Karnataka, that can a Muslim girl, wear a headscarf in school, and she was expelled for it because it was highlighted that in a school you have to wear a proper uniform. You cannot showcase your religion. It was based on this understanding of laicite. Wearing abaya. The French government announced that practice of wearing abaya would be banned in state-run schools as it violated the principle of laicite, which is the French idea of secularism. The education minister said, when you walk into a classroom, you shouldn't be able to identify the pupil's religion just by looking at them. And secularism means freedom to emancipate oneself through school. So, their understanding of secularism is slightly different from ours. And that's why UPSC asked this question in 2019. And in your magazine, you can see the difference between Western and Indian secularism. Indian secularism is based on positive model. Western secularism is based on negative model. So, it says evolved recently, secular traditions in Indian secularism rooted since Indus Valley, principal distance approach, equal respect for all religions, balances personal and community rights, state aids under Article 30, freedom to display religious symbols, tackles intra and inter-community issues, history of diversity and coexistence, promotes coexistence and respect, and regular interaction with communities. And on this side, Western part, rigid separation between state and religion, focus on individual rights, emphasis on individual freedom, no state aid, public display discouraged, focus on intra-community, internal reforms emphasized, and emphasizes diversity and limited interaction with respect to state and religion. So, these are some of the differences from Western secularism and Indian secularism. Now, coming to the third topic of Center announcing Adi Karma Yogi program for nationwide capacity building in tribal schemes implementation, tribal scheme implementation. So, it says officials deliberate and conclude that the real challenge is a lack of motivation in officials and not a lack of schemes or programs. So, the idea is to motivate the officials to ensure that the schemes are properly implemented, and this topic gets covered under important aspects of governance under GS2. So, it says national conference marks the launch of Adi Karma Yogi beta version, a responsive government initiative, where the government or its officials are responsive to the schemes, responsive to the aspirations of the people, responsive to the concerns of the people, and hence provide suitable measures. So, regarding the schemes, it says that Union Minister for Tribal Affairs said that sustainable and inclusive development in tribal areas must be rooted in community engagement, government which has values of empathy, and shift from tokenism to transformation, and hence the role of public servants becomes very important, because without their active participation no schemes would be implemented on the ground. So, it says the minister emphasized that Adi Karma Yogi beta version marks a strategic move towards creating a governance ecosystem that listens, responds and uplifts. And overall, reaffirming his ministry's commitment on the overall development of tribal communities, the minister said that tribal development initiatives are implemented not just for people but with the people, making every stakeholder a true karmyogi of change. Hence, it overall also talks about the concept of participatory governance. And this particular government scheme, Adi Karmyogi, aimed at building a cadre of highly motivated officers and change makers dedicated to grassroots transformation. So it also will act as an interface or a bridge between the public at the grassroots level and also the officers. And overall, the idea is to motivate the officers to ensure proper transformation in tribal areas. So it says the program seeks to bring a fundamental shift in the attitude and motivation of field level officials, emphasizing citizen-centric ideation and delivery, and hence the idea of participating governance and also implementation of various schemes. Now this again provided in your magazine. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs launched this flagship program, Adi Karmyogi Initiative, at the Adi Avnation, a national conference of the Tribal Affairs Ministry. Aim, building a cadre of highly motivated officers and change makers dedicated to grassroots transformation. Program aims to bring about a fundamental shift in the attitude of officers and hence ensures greater level of coordination with the public on the ground level for citizen-centric ideation and delivery of schemes. Objective, to take capacity building to about 20 lakh field level stakeholders by creating a batch of trainers and masters trainers at the state, district and block levels, and also reaching 1 lakh tribal villages and habitation is the overall target of this particular scheme. Coming to the last news, it says Election Commission begins process for delisting 345 registered unrecognized political parties. Now please, first of all, before going this, let's go through the basics of it. As I've told you that the powers of Election Commission flows from Article 324, Superintendence, Direction and Control, and political party is an important aspect of election. So it says, under the election symbols, reservation and allotment order, it talks about classification of political parties. So it says, for the purposes of this order and for such other purposes as the Commission may specify, political parties are either recognized political parties, so I'll write it here, political parties are either recognized political parties or unrecognized political parties. Either recognized or unrecognized. And a recognized political party can be further classified as a national party or as a state party, provided they fulfill the basic criteria regarding number of seats in Lok Sabha and State Assembly, or percentage of votes which they have garnered in assembly election and also in general election, that is for election of parliament. So this is something you must remember, that political parties are categorized as recognized and unrecognized. So what we will discuss about is unrecognized political parties. Okay? And this power with respect to classification of political parties flows directly from Article 324 of the Constitution of India and Section 29A of Representation of People Act 1951. Okay, and hence the Election Commission can issue various guidelines with respect to unrecognized political parties. So it says, these parties have not contested single election in the last 6 years since 2019, and their offices could not be located anywhere because whatever address they gave while registering their political parties, those address could not be found. Of the 2800 odd RUPPs currently registered with EC, and many have failed to fulfill essential conditions required to continue as an RUPP. So it says the Election Commission of India has begun the process of delisting or removing their name from the register. Registered unrecognized political parties which have failed to fulfill the essential condition of contesting even a single election for the last 6 years since 2019 and whose offices could not be found. Same aspects provided under here. Now, see, certain privileges are provided to a political party, and one of these privileges is that you get exemption from income tax. So it says privileges: eligible for election symbols under certain conditions, exempt from tax on donations under section 13A of Income Tax Act, and even can receive political donations, allowed to contest elections as registered parties. So Supreme Court ruled in INC versus Institute of Social Welfare that Election Commission does not have the power to deregister any political party under RP Act, but under the symbols order it says ECI can deregister a party only in exceptional cases like fraud, loss of constitutional allegiance, or if declared unlawful by the government. So under the symbols order, EC does get that power, that too if those political parties do not follow the Election Commission's guidelines. So under the election symbols order, what are the powers given to these political parties? Under this order, EC has it has empowered the Election Commission to allot symbols at elections in parliamentary and assembly constituencies, recognition of political parties, and also suspend or withdraw recognition of recognized or unrecognized political party for its failures to observe Model Code of Conduct or any other lawful instructions of EC. So even if the political parties do not observe Model Code of Conduct, then for that purpose also their name can be removed from the registry, or such political parties can be suspended or withdrew. This power of the Commission is based on the powers conferred by Article 324 of the Constitution of India, Section 29A of the Representation of People Act 1951, and conduct of election rules and all other powers enabling in this behalf. So Section 29A says that registration with Election Commission of associations and bodies as political parties. Any association or body of individual citizens of India calling itself a political party and intending to avail itself of the provisions of this part shall make an application to the Election Commission for its registration as a political party for the purpose of this act. So a political party shall be registered under Article 29A. Now it is true that deregistration of political parties is not provided under Representation of People Act, but these political parties can be suspended from their operation under the Election Symbols Order of 1968. Further, this Section 29A further highlights that every such application shall contain the following particulars, namely name of association or body, state in which its head office is situated, address to which letters and other communications meant for it should be sent, and the name of its president, secretary, treasurer, and other office bearers. So two important reasons: that they have not conducted elections or they are not contested for election, and second, their address could not be found where they have provided. So it basically, at times these political parties are also constituted for the purpose of certain fraud or even for hawala transfers, and that's why sorry, the Election Commission has deleted the names of these RUPPs from the register maintained by the Election Commission. So overall it says that Section 29 of RP Act 1951 requires RUPP to furnish contribution report under conduct of election rules, and such contributions are exempted from the provisions of income tax as an incentive to parties for further strengthening the electoral democracy. But at times this provision is also misused by these political parties. So these political parties, RUPPs, are basically used as a conduit for fraudulent activities, particularly financial frauds. So following details are needed to be provided, all of this which we just saw under Section 29A of Representation of People Act. And since these registered unrecognized political parties have flouting the guidelines of EC, and that's why it highlights that EC has begun the process of delisting the names of 345 registered and unrecognized political parties in the country. So registered unrecognized political party becomes an important topic from your both prelims and mains perspective regarding the powers of Election Commission. So these were the news with respect to this week from the section of Polity and Governance under Weekly Magnum Current Affairs. Thank you very much.